There is a book that was read by the earliest followers of Jesus, a book that was quoted inside the Bible itself, a book that shaped the beliefs of prophets, priests, and ancient civilizations for thousands of years. And then, without warning, it vanished, not lost, not forgotten, deliberately removed, hidden from the world for nearly 2 millennia. And the reason they buried it is far more disturbing than anything written inside it. Welcome to Celestial Secrets. Tonight we go somewhere most channels refuse to go. Tonight we open the Book of Enoch. Before we begin, understand something. This is not a fringe text. This is not mythology invented by conspiracy theorists in dark corners of the internet. The Book of Enoch is a real ancient manuscript. It survived inside the Ethiopian Orthodox Church for centuries. Dead Sea Scroll fragments of it were found in the Qumran caves, dating back over 2,000 years. And yet the moment Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire, this book was quietly removed from the biblical canon. Declared dangerous, declared heretical, declared forbidden. Ask yourself, what could a book possibly contain that would terrify the architects of organized religion so deeply that they needed the entire world to forget it existed? Let's start at the beginning. Enoch is one of the most mysterious figures in all of Scripture. In the book of Genesis, his life is described in just a few brief, cryptic sentences. He lived 365 years, he walked with God, and then, and this is where it gets strange, he never died. The text says God took him. No burial, no death. He simply disappeared. In a book filled with centuries-long genealogies, Enoch is given 7 sentences and then erased from the narrative, almost as if someone wanted him forgotten. But Enoch himself left something behind. A testimony, a warning, an account of things no human being was supposed to witness. And for thousands of years that account circulated among the most sacred circles of Jewish and early Christian communities before powerful hands buried it in silence. So what is actually inside this forbidden book? The Book of Enoch opens not with a prayer or a hymn, but with a vision. Enoch claims that while still alive, he was taken beyond the physical world. He was lifted through layers of heaven, through fire and ice, through dimensions that had no names. He saw the foundations of the earth. He saw the machinery behind stars. He was shown things that, he says, no other human being has ever seen. But the most terrifying part of his account, the part that made religious authorities sweat, is what he says he saw before all of that. He saw what happened before the flood. He saw the Watchers. The Watchers. This is where the Book of Enoch stops being ancient philosophy and starts being something else entirely. Something that still has no clean explanation. According to Enoch, the Watchers were a group of divine beings, angels, as most translations call them, who were assigned to observe humanity from above, to watch, to guard. But somewhere in the depths of their observation, something went wrong. They saw the daughters of men, and they wanted them. 200 of these beings, according to Enoch, made a pact on a mountain called Mount Hermon. They swore an oath together. They agreed they would descend, and they descended. Now here is where you need to slow down and think carefully about what the text is actually describing. Because the Book of Enoch is not vague about what happened next, it is brutally specific. These Watchers did not simply interact with humanity. They taught humanity. And what they taught was not spiritual wisdom. What they taught was technology. What they taught was power. One Watcher, named Azazel, is credited in the text with teaching men how to make weapons, swords, shields, instruments of war that had not existed before. Another, named Semjaza, is said to have taught enchantments and the cutting of roots, what we today might call pharmacology or ritual chemistry. Others taught astrology. Others taught the reading of omens. Others taught the secrets of the clouds, the movement of celestial bodies, the manipulation of the earth itself. Does this sound familiar? Because if you strip away the ancient language and look at what is actually being described, you are looking at a sudden and inexplicable leap in human civilization. The same leap that archaeologists and historians cannot fully explain to this day. And what came from the union of these Watchers and human women, according to Enoch, was something the world had never seen before. Giants, the Nephilim. The text describes them as consuming first the food of the land, then the animals, and finally turning against one another in violence so catastrophic that the earth itself cried out for help. The cries of humanity, says the Book of Enoch, rose up to the highest heaven. And what came next is what you already know. But the version you know was sanitized, because in the book of Genesis, the great flood is presented as divine punishment for human wickedness, a moral failing, a spiritual collapse. But in the book of Enoch, the flood is not about human sin at all. It is a cleanup operation. It is God responding to a cosmic contamination event. The Watchers had broken the boundary between two kinds of existence, the divine and the mortal, and what they produced threatened to devour the world. The flood, according to Enoch, was the containment protocol, and the Watchers themselves were not forgiven. They were bound, thrown into darkness, beneath the earth, in a place called Tartarus, waiting for a final judgment. Some scholars who have studied both the Book of Enoch and the New Testament have noted something deeply unsettling. The Apostle Peter uses that exact word, Tartarus, in the only place it appears in the entire New Testament. Peter writes of spirits who are imprisoned there, bound, waiting. It is a direct echo of Enoch's testimony, and it was written by someone who had clearly read this book, which raises the question that no one in official religious circles wants to answer. If the earliest Christians knew the Book of Enoch, if the authors of the New Testament quoted from it and referenced it, if the church fathers in the 1st and 2nd centuries cited it and debated it, why was it removed? Who made that decision? And more importantly, what were they afraid would happen if ordinary people kept reading it? There are scholars who believe the answer lies not in theology, but in power. The moment the church became institutionalized, the moment it merged with the Roman Empire under Constantine in the 4th century, the definition of acceptable scripture became a political act, and the Book of Enoch presented problems that political religion could not afford. It described a cosmos far more complex than the simple heaven and earth framework that was easier to control. It suggested that powerful beings had interfered with human development. It implied that the flood was not about morality, but about a contamination of bloodlines, of genetics, of something encoded in the physical body of humanity itself. These were ideas that made authority uncomfortable, because if divine beings could intervene in human affairs, if they could corrupt and be corrupted, if the cosmos was that messy, that contested, that dangerous, then the church's claim to be the single, clean pipeline between God and man becomes a great deal harder to sell. But there is another layer to this that goes even deeper, and this is the part that the most serious researchers of ancient texts have spent decades quietly wrestling with. The Book of Enoch does not treat the Watchers as simple villains. It is more complicated than that. Enoch himself is sent as a messenger to the Watchers after their imprisonment. He is tasked with delivering their sentence to them. And in that encounter there is a moment where the Watchers weep, where they beg for intercession, where they ask Enoch, a mortal man, to petition on their behalf before the throne of the divine. Think about what that means. These beings who were supposed to be superior to humanity, who had divine knowledge and cosmic power, are reduced to pleading with a man. A human being becomes the intermediary between fallen angels and the highest heaven. There is something in that reversal of hierarchy that is unlike anything else in all of ancient religious literature, and it sits there, buried in this forbidden book, waiting for someone to understand what it means. There are researchers today, archaeologists, theologians, independent scholars working outside traditional institutions, who believe the Book of Enoch preserves a memory of something real. Not metaphor, not allegory. A memory of contact, a memory of intervention, a memory of something that happened in the deep prehistory of the human race that our official narratives, both scientific and religious, have no framework to contain. They point to the sudden appearance of agriculture, of writing, of advanced astronomical knowledge in ancient Sumer. They point to the strange skulls and elongated skeletons found in sites across Peru, Egypt, and the Middle East. They point to the consistent cross-cultural myths of sky beings who came down and taught and transformed early humanity across civilizations that should never have had contact with one another. And they say, What if Enoch wasn't writing mythology? What if he was writing history in the only language available to him? Even if you reject that interpretation entirely, even if you read the Book of Enoch as pure symbolic literature, what you cannot reject is this. Someone, at some point in history, decided that this book was dangerous enough to need to disappear. Not debated, not archived, disappeared. And the fact that it survived at all, buried in the mountains of Ethiopia, hidden in clay jars in desert caves, preserved by a single ancient church that never received the memo to destroy it. That survival feels like something more than accident. It feels like the book itself refused to die. What exactly did Enoch see beyond the seventh heaven? What were the names of all the watchers, and why are only some of them recorded? Why does the Book of Enoch describe specific stars as prisons for disobedient angels? Why did the Dead Sea Scroll community, one of the most disciplined and secretive Jewish sects in history, treasure this book above almost all others? And if the union of the Watchers and humanity produced something that threatened all of creation, is that bloodline truly gone? Or does it still run, quietly, through the veins of the world? The Book of Enoch ends not with resolution, but with warning. A warning aimed not at ancient people, but at a generation yet to come. A generation living in the final days of a cycle, the Watchers themselves set in motion. Enoch addresses them directly. He addresses you, and the warning is not about sin in the way we were taught to understand it. It is about knowledge, specifically about the kind of knowledge that was never meant to be in human hands, and what we have done with it, somewhere between what was written and what was removed, between what was preserved and what was destroyed. The truth about this world and who shaped it is still waiting. Some doors once opened cannot be closed, and some secrets, once known, change everything about how you see the sky at night.